Welcome to Trinity Wesleyan Church Online. We are so glad to have you here today. We've been praying for you, and we're excited for what God is going to be speaking to you today. Welcome to Money Matters Part 3. We are talking about the matters pertaining to money. And we've been using the wizard to help us, the Wizard of Oz, to help us realize that money isn't as scary anymore as what we used to think. Just like when all the Wizard of Oz people, Dorothy, Lion Man, all those people come in to see the wizard, and they pull back the curtain and they realize that the wizard is not as scary as what they thought it was, that it was just a man behind a curtain. Money can't be scary anymore, just as we've been talking about. When God is in charge, when God is our provider, when we realize that when we become content with what God has given us, money's not scary because God is our provider. Money's not scary because God is the one who gives us everything that we need. So we can't be afraid of money anymore. We're pulling back the curtain on money. When God is our provider, like Abraham, he provides the ram in the thicket just when we need it. Just when we need it. When God does the impossible, like Abraham and Sarah, and they have a baby when they're very, very old, when God does the impossible, we can trust him because he comes through even on the crazy things. When we're content like the birds of the air, we have everything we need. We don't have to store up many things. We don't have to hold back all of our possessions, and we can just realize that God is taking care of us. And when we trust God like the flowers of the field, we're going to have clothing. We're going to have our nutrients, just what God has given us for that day. We've been talking about how Jehovah Jireh, that nothing is impossible, that the provision comes from the Lord and it comes from God only. Last week, if you did your homework and you went through each question, where are you not content? Where has God provided in the past? And what happened when I relied on my own strength? What happened? If you went through all those last week, you're going to realize that God is your provider. That God is the one who gives you everything you need. And when we go on our own strength, that's when times get scary. When we try to do it our own way and we don't put God first, that's when money gets scary. God has come through for you. God has pulled you out of bad situations. He's provided at just the right time. But on your own power, we always came up short. We're stressed, we're worried, we have sleepless nights where we just toss and turn thinking about money. But God is the one who provides the ram in the thicket. When God promises something, he always comes through. And when the promise seems crazy, the provision doesn't have to come from you. When God is giving you something crazy, a crazy dream, a crazy promise, you don't have to provide for that. That the provision doesn't have to come from you. And that's a good thing because we don't have to rely on our own strength. Today is probably the only money advice you're going to hear from me from this kind of platform. Today's probably the only time you're going to hear me talk about actual ways to talk about money. I mean, the first 2 weeks of this series were getting your mind right, focusing on God, having a good relationship with money first. You see where it comes from, and when you see where it comes from, you don't have to worry about it. When you focus on God, money doesn't shift the focus from God. That's when you're focusing on God. It becomes an avenue for provision, an avenue for God to provide to you. When you're content with godliness, it moves us forward. when we're content with what we have, and we realize that God is the one in charge, it moves us forward. Realizing God is in charge and not us. There's a TV show I like to watch. It's called The Prophet, and there's this billionaire named Marcus Lemonis who comes in and he invests in small businesses but revolutionize how they do business. And he says this in every episode. He says, I'm 100% in charge. And even if he has a minority or major stake in the company, he makes all the decisions. He says, I'm 100% in charge. And the same with God. Even when he asks for 10% back, he's 100% in charge. 100% in charge is better than 90% struggling alone. It's difficult, and you're going to struggle. And these small business owners struggle because they want to make the decisions. They want to do what they know. But usually it always becomes something better when they let the person in charge be in charge. And there's always going to be that tension between doing what you know versus what you know is best. There's always going to be that tension. And until Marcus shows them the numbers at the end of the show, they realize that he is trustworthy, that he knows what he's talking about. They realize that he is in it to help other people, not just to make money, but he's in it to help other people, to help small businesses. For us, we can realize that God is good, that God is helping us, but we have to realize that he is 100% in charge, and that's going to be better for us. It's going to be better for those around us. It's going to be better for our community when God is 100% in charge of our finances. Before we get into it, I feel like there's two groups of people here. And I felt this for months and months. I've been preparing for this series. And these words from God may frustrate one group, but the other group is really going to cherish these words. You may be doing well financially, and you're going to be like, why are they talking about money? They just want my money. In that same group, you could have people that are not doing as well, and they say, I can't afford these words. They just want my money that I don't have. And if you're in this group, hear these words. I don't want your money. It's not about me. These are not words to trick you or force you to give. It's not to make you just comply because I want something. It has nothing to do with me. It's not for me. It's not about me. But these words that God has given are full of life. The words are from God to advance God's kingdom, to advance the hope of Jesus Christ in our community and in our lives. There is blessing in giving to God. And then the other group who's going to cherish these words, they're thinking, this is just what I needed. I needed this help. Wow, I didn't realize this could help me so much. I didn't realize how much God can help me revolutionize my finances. In 1 Kings 3, King Solomon went to go offer sacrifices at Gibeon, and God came to Solomon in a dream. He says, ask for whatever you want, and I'll give it to you. And Solomon could have asked for anything. He could have asked for an iPhone, or when they didn't have technology, he could have asked for an iPhone or mansions or death to all of his enemies. He could have asked for anything. But he asked God to give him wisdom, to have discernment, to help the people that he's in charge of, to help him discern between right and wrong. So he was given wisdom. He was given discernment. And God knew Solomon's heart before coming to him. It wasn't just about how Solomon wanted to lead this nation well. It wasn't about Solomon, but it's how to help him lead this nation well. And God knew that before coming to him, and so that's why he was able to ask him. But he became the most wise man on earth because he didn't ask for things, because he didn't ask for stuff. He didn't ask for riches, but he wanted help to lead his nation. So he's a very wise person. He wrote Song of Solomon, all the Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. Basically, he wrote a book about love, a book about life's wisdom, and a book about self-reflection. He was an amazingly wise person. And we could go into Ecclesiastes and talk about how everything is meaningless, but I don't think that's going to be helpful for us today. But we're going to be in the book of Proverbs. We're going to be talking about life's wisdom. And today we're going to be talking regarding money. In Proverbs 27:23, it says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds." Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds. He's saying, go find your sheep in the pasture. And I'm Pastor Aaron, and I'm here to help you find your sheep. Obviously, not your sheep, because we don't have sheep anymore. Most people don't have sheep. But flocks were basically currency, the money, the dough, cash, the green, whatever. If you had a $100 bill, you wouldn't just leave it outside in a field by itself. You're just like, oh, this $100 will be great. You'd go gather it and keep it safe. You put it in your wallet or keep it in your purse or European shoulder bag. You know how much you have and if any of them are sick or needed tended to. And that's what Solomon's talking about here. Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds. He's the wisest man ever talking about sheep and flocks, but really he's talking about historical budgeting. Understanding your business. First, you got to understand your money. How much do you make? How much do you spend? How much do you save? And how much do you tithe? You have to know the state of your money. You have to know what you make, what expenses you have, what you're saving for retirement, saving for a house, whatever you're doing, and how much you tithe. I know how much Jen and I make together, and we have a general budget that we stick to. And there are always exceptions to the budget, but exceptions are never habits. In our first year of marriage, we spent $1,500 at Chili's. We love Chili's. There was not a lot to do where we lived. That was not budgeted. We could afford it, but it wasn't ideal. We could afford it, but it wasn't ideal. It's not the best way to spend your money. Jen and I knew exactly how much we make per month, and we can save if we need to. If something big came up, we could afford a big purchase or a bill over a couple months if we just cut back on the things that we do not need. And I'm going to give you a little glimpse into our life. If something came up, I want to tell you how much we can save if we just cut out these things. If we had to save for something, say, like our transmission went out a couple months ago. If we didn't have it in savings, we already had a plan of what we had to do to save enough money to afford this. So we would get rid of Hulu Live, that's $75. We would get rid of Apple Music, that's $15 a month. We'd get rid of my Adobe suite, which is $60. It's mainly for work and it's mainly for the side hustle. I do graphic design and logos and stuff on the side. And we would get rid of Ellie's dance class. That's $90 a month. We'd get rid of our internet. That's $85 a month. We'd get rid of our cell phones. We'd probably sell our cell phones. Try to say that 5 times fast. We would stop going out to eat. We may not have date nights out on the town. We could save $300 a month just not going to get coffee or fast food or going on date nights. So if we got rid of all these things in 1 month, we could save $785 in 1 month. Because you don't need these things. You don't need streaming services. You don't need to listen to music. You don't have to have internet. You don't have to have a cell phone. You don't have to go out to eat. But realizing what you can take away easily is going to help you in the long run if something comes up. If we had to, we could afford a down payment for a vehicle in less than 6 months. If we had to, we could afford that easily just by cutting back on the things that we do not need. And people feel like you have to have a cell phone or you have to have internet. You can go to the library. You can do other things. You got to be smarter. You got to be more creative. If Jen and I were to have a cheaper date night, we could make brownies, and that's probably like $2. You just have to think differently so that you can save differently. We have to realize that we have to be able to track our spending. And a lot of times people don't track their spending because most people don't use a check register anymore, because most things are done either by a card, a debit or credit card, or through Venmo or Cash App. There's not really ways to keep a check register, but there is. Your bank likely has software on the website where you can check your bank account, where you can check about how much you've spent. You can, even put it into different categories. Your bank, it seems so, it took me a long time. I even asked Jen, what are ways you can track your spending? And she goes, your bank. And I was like, why didn't I think of that? But your bank it seems so like, duh, I should have thought about that. You can track your spending. If you have Microsoft Word, you have access to a budget template. Even if you have to go to the library to make a budget template, if you're cutting back on internet or not having internet, you can track your spending just by having Microsoft Word and keeping every receipt, writing it down. An easy way, if you have a phone, if you can afford a phone, if you can afford a cell phone, is an app called Mint, M-I-N-T. It's free and it automatically inputs your spending. It takes your loans, it takes your bills, your credit cards, and it puts those in the categories that can help you track your spending. You link that with your bank account, and it's also going to send you an alert to let you know when you're close to overspending on a category, saying, I'm spending too much on gas. Maybe I need to stop driving around so much. Walking is not going to hurt anybody if you have to. And what King Solomon is saying is he's telling you to take care of your own flock. You can't just expect somebody else to go take care of your flock. It is your flock. As we talked about a burden and a load in Galatians, that a burden is something that you can't take care of, but a load is something you have to take care of. Your flock is your load. You have to carry your load. You can't expect other people to do it for you. So you have to be responsible, because others aren't going to take better care of your money. You have to do it yourself. It's part of being an adult, and laziness is not an excuse, and ignorance is not going to work anymore. You have to be responsible for your own flock. King Solomon also says that he's saying, don't let anything slip away foolishly. Don't let anything slip away foolishly. Like, you watch over your flock, you tend to your herd. So don't take out loans for things. I mean, cars and houses are exceptions, but not all cars, not all houses. If you save enough, you can pay cash. Jen and I have paid for 3 vehicles cash. Loans cost more in the long run. Loans cost a lot more in the long run because you have interest. Obviously, don't do cash advances, because those things will cheat you and they will hurt you financially like nobody's business. If you can't handle a credit card, cut it up. If you can't handle a credit card, cut it up. You wouldn't put alcohol in front of a recovering alcoholic. So if you can't handle a credit card, cut it up and get rid of it. We pay our credit card off every single month, because we know we can handle it. We've had it for many, many years, and we can handle a credit card, and we like having the points from using it, which pays for dates, which pays for other things that we may not have planned for. In Proverbs 22:7, it says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. And just like last week, who is the master of your universe? Is it God? Or is it money? Because if you're borrowing from a lender, you are a slave to money. You're a slave to the lender. And Jesus is saying there's only room for one master. Money will own you, or you will submit to God and trust him in all things. That's the 2 options here. Money will own you, or you submit to God and trust him in all things. Submitting doesn't sound fun, but it becomes a way to honor God. When we submit to God, we realize that his ways are higher than our ways. And he is wiser than human wisdom. And we can't compete with that. So when we submit to him, we realize that we are not as high as God. We are not as wise as God. So we submit to him to honor him because he will show us the right way. Submitting is the realization that God is in control and we are not. But we still have a part to play. And right now, I'm going to have you click over to another link in the description. Click over to another link in the description. It's an SNL video that's really going to help us take the next step forward into understanding our finances. So go ahead and click that link. And then when you're done with that, come back to this link and we'll go from there. So this video is funny. You can take a step back and examine your finances. And most banks and apps will give you an itemized spending report monthly. It'll say your food, your gas, your groceries, entertainment, whatever. And it usually says other for things that are not categorized. But you can look back and say, wait, if I don't have the money, I don't need to spend it. And this is going very old school, the Dave Ramsey method. If you don't have the cash to do it, you can't afford it. If you don't have the money, don't buy it. If you don't have the money, don't buy it. And this goes to another point that Solomon talks about is flocks didn't come to you. Flocks didn't come to you. You went to the flocks. You went and found your flocks, and you went and found your herds, and you went and did whatever you could to make sure that your flock was safe, that it was under control, that there were no lions or bears or anything that was going to take your flock or herd away. So you need to go research. You have to go find out the state of your flocks. You have to go to it. It's not something that you can just wait for them to come to you and hope for the best. You have to plan for the future so you don't lose any of your flock. And Dave Ramsey says if you don't have $1,000 saved, you can't afford technology. You can't afford cell phones. You can't afford spending money on entertainment, going out to if you don't have anything saved, you actually don't have any backup. If you don't have it saved, you can't afford what you think you can afford because it adds up quick. Just as like $75 a month for Hulu doesn't sound like a ton, but you add it up with all the other things and you can see that you can save almost $800 a month. Whatever your finances are, you can go through and check those out, but you have to go to your flock. You can afford to save for a better vehicle. You can afford to let go of wants or rewards if you feel like you have to have them. You can let go of that to have something better in the long run. It's not going to kill you and probably be better off without it. It'd probably be better off if we didn't have Hulu. It'd probably be better off if we didn't have cell phones because we're going to be focusing on God and not things that are just wasting our time. It's like living like this is difficult. But things that are difficult are usually better for us. But a smarter decision and a way that we can honor God with our finances. Solomon also says this in Proverbs 21:10. It says, "The wise store up food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." Hey, that's a kick to the face. That's a kick to the face. It just feels like the wise store up their food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. It's saying that the wise are people that are storing up food and olive oil. But the fools are the ones who just get rid of their money quickly, who just spend it on things, who don't pay attention to where it's going. The wise store up food and olive oil, the things that they can save, and are smart with their money, but fools go out and spend anything they want. They do it on things that they do not need. While we don't have to worry about food and clothing because God has taken it. He has that under control. That doesn't mean to spoil what God has already given us. That doesn't mean to spoil what God's already given us. Just because you have it doesn't mean that you need to spend it. Just because you have it doesn't mean you need to spend it. Before I met Jen, I was definitely foolish. I was one of the fools. Before I met Jen, who really helped me figure out finances better, Before I met Jen, I was somebody who spent everything down. If I had $5.23, I'm like, well, I got $5 for gas. I could go somewhere. Or if I have like $80, I'm like, oh, I could spend 75 on clothing. $5 is enough for the next this. That was foolish. I was one of the fools because I was just spending down to zero almost every single week. And if I had it, I spent it. Was not looking toward the future. And if you're not looking towards the future, you're somebody who is just gulping yours down. There's the 80-10-10 rule, and it's something that we can live by. It's something that we can live by. Basically, the 80-10-10 rule means to keep your expenses to 80%, you tithe 10%, and you save or invest 10%. Keep your expenses to 80%, tithe 10%, and save 10%. And it's very simple to remember, 80-10-10. If your expenses are over 80%, cut expenses or make more money. That's what it is. Cut expenses or make more money. If you can't save money, you can cut extra expenses. You can cut your cell phones. You can cut video games. You can cut DoorDash. You can cut anything else out if you can't save any money. You're spending too much. You're living higher than the means that God has given you. If you need money fast, what you can do is you can liquidate. And a lot of companies do this before they go bankrupt. They start to liquidate. They start to get rid of things they don't need. They start to get rid of things that don't sell. And if it doesn't come with you after you die, why do we spend so much on heartache and trouble keeping it? So you can sell what you don't need. You don't need the video games. You don't need the cell phone. You don't need those little trinkets that you thought you needed. You don't need that candle that says relax. You don't need anything else besides food and clothing. So sell what you can, live on less. And there's many, many places that you can sell things. Facebook has a place called Facebook Marketplace. It's very easy to just take a picture of what you have and put it on, and people will contact you about it. There's apps like OfferUp. There's apps like Craigslist. There's many things that you can just sell what you don't have and make money. If you need to make more money, you can find a side hobby. You can find a side hustle you can make more money with until you get promoted or until you can get a raise or until you can get more hours. Find a side hustle that you can actually make more money with. 78% of NFL players go broke within 2 years of leaving the league. 78%. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or if you have a little bit of money. If your relationship with money is focused on spending, the things will be short-lived. Even if you're making millions of dollars, even if you feel like you have it together and I can spend. If your relationship with money is focused on spending, it's going to be short-lived. But if your relationship with money is focused on God and stewarding up what God has given you, it will be eternal. Treasure up eternal things, and you can enjoy those things on earth and in heaven. But if you treasure up earthly things and that's it, that's all you get to have. It stays here where moths and vermin are going to destroy. If you don't have a side hobby or a side hustle and you need to make more money, the internet is full of ways to make money. You don't have to pay for internet to use the internet. You can go places where you can get it for free. You can go to a coffee shop. You can go to the library, as I've said. The internet is full of ways to make extra money. So when the math doesn't add up, change the numbers. And I know you can't do that in regular math, but when the math doesn't add up, when your finances don't add up, change the numbers. Make them smaller. Make them smaller. Get rid of the expenses you don't need. If the math doesn't add up, change the numbers. Try to make some more money. You can't spend more than you make. That puts you in a deficit. That puts you in the negative. So you got to change the numbers so that you can make more and spend less. God doesn't put us in bad financial situations. God doesn't. but we do. We can stick to the needed expenses. We can stick to the groceries and clothing. And it may not be the things you want to eat. It may not be the things you want to wear, but it's what you have. It's what you can afford. If you can afford it, it's good for you. God provides everything we need, but we still have a part to play. We still have a job to do. We still have a load to carry. Whatever we have, whether we have 1 talent or 2 talents or 5 talents or 100 talents, as when Jesus was speaking about the parable of the talents, whether you have 1 type of salary or you have 2 salaries or 3 yearly salaries or 100 yearly salaries, however much money you have, we are called to be good stewards of what we've been given. And not being jealous of somebody else. If I have 1 salary or if I make $20,000, being jealous of somebody that's making $100,000. Because it may not be as glamorous as what you think. It may be putting more hours in than what you want to do. So not being jealous of somebody else's money, but being content with what we have, cutting expenses, and raising money if you can. Anything other than food and clothing is extra. Anything other than food or clothing is just a reward. It's a blessing from God. The fact that I can have a cell phone, the fact that I have nice shoes, the fact that I have anything more than food and just clothing is a blessing. And in America, we spend our blessings. We think that we need more. We think we need to have all these things. And the government says that poverty is anything considered less than $34,000 per household. And that's 14% of people in the United States. But the rest of the world makes around $9,000 per household. So if our poverty line is $34,000, think about all the people that make on average $9,000 per household per year. While you may not have a lot, and while you may not have what you want, and even if you have medical bills, even if you have all these things, we are still a lot better off than most people throughout the whole world. I'm not saying it's easy, but we have what we need. And if we don't, we can always have more education to tend to our flock that we do have. Not letting our flock go astray, making sure our finances are in order, that we're not spending more than what we make. Being careful with what we spend, doing all these things so that we can take steps closer to God. And money doesn't become the focus, but we can focus on God.